Hello, gardeners, and welcome to another beautiful Monday, the last gardening week of 2020. And I know I'm looking forward to 2021 probably just as much, if not more, than everybody else. This is going to be a great gardening year, I anticipate, especially for so many of you that were gardening as your first year this year. Now, next year, you're much more of an expert than you were when you began. So let's hope that 2021 is a much better year, and it's just a week away. So good to have you all here today. It's been a lot of discussion. It's so nice to see the people that are checking on before the live stream begins. I see that Doris Miller is on the road listening today. That's great. So many of you have been so active. Laura Full has been so witty and wise already this morning that it's really a great way to start the day. And let me go ahead and start with a question that PD was wondering about as far as green manures or cover crops. And I do have a video on this that I did about a year ago that you could look up and get some ideas. But I think doing green manures and cover crops are great ideas for garden beds. And often we think about a cover crop as something we would do in open ground in an open bed area, but they can easily be done in raised beds or even in small containers. The idea is just cover the soil. Depending on your cover crop, you can add nutrients or improve the soil structure. And now that's when you get to what we call green manure. And it's really not manure from an animal. It's the plant that we either turn into the soil or we chop off and allow it to remain on the soil as a mulch. And then as it decomposes, it adds nutrients to the soil. That's why it's called a green manure. But it's definitely something you should do. My favorites are hairy vetch, and I have hairy vetch seeds already in some of the beds that I recently cleaned up. Those seeds won't be germinating until the spring, but then they'll be growing right away. I also have some vetch that's still alive in some of the other beds. It's a really hardy plant. I also have winter rye in some of my beds, and it's still green and growing. Now, it's not growing much, and the soil in the beds is pretty frozen, but that top couple inches is thawed out during the day. And the winter rye seems to be doing okay. So there's some really hardy plants you can use as cover crops. And then in the spring, all that green material will benefit the soil as I chop those plants down. So there's a little bit about some green manures. If you have other experience, other plants you like to use, by all means, go ahead and share that in the comments now. Okay, let's see what else we have popping in. Already some talk about seeds. I'll be talking about seed catalogs today. I'll be talking about grow room operations. I'll also be talking about some ways that you can save some money with your gardening as you move into the new year, because it's one of those things. I like to save money in the garden. I'm assuming you like to save money in the garden. So maybe we can share some ideas and see what we can help each other out with along those lines. And Little Shop of Seeds, Danielle is one of those suggesting that. That's a very low cost option. One of the things M.I. Gardner, we've talked about in the past, used to sell seeds for $1 a package. This year they've gone up to $2 a package with free shipping, and that's still cheaper than a lot of other options. One thing I learned this year, I bought seeds from a lot of different seed companies, which doesn't surprise you, I'm sure. But I would buy the same variety from Baker Creek, and then from M.I. Gardner, and then from the dollar store, where I would get 2 packages for $1. And I germinated those seeds, grew them in my garden, and I did that with a few different varieties of plants. They all did fine. So you really shouldn't expect much difference by buying cheaper seed. You might not get as many in the package, and the package may not have the pretty pictures and a lot of the explanations that some other companies will have, but you can definitely save money by finding a discount source of seeds. And so Little Shop of Seeds is one of those that I would suggest. I haven't bought from them yet. but it is something that you could check out, and you should expect good results from all of those. Nadine Horton, happy birthday to you today. That's wonderful. I hope you have a wonderful birthday, and I appreciate you spending part of it with the Gardener Scott community. That's awesome. Okay, let's see what else we have popping up. Man Pig Bear, thank you for throwing out that happy birthday wish as well. Andrea Vesquez says, hi, Gardener Scott. I'm a new gardener. My soil is like sand, black, but it drains water well. There are parts where it is hard and nothing grows. Hi from Detroit. Organic matter is the key. It took me a long time to fully appreciate just how much good organic matter does in the soil. And I've gardened a lot in very sandy soil, and I've also gardened in some clay. In both cases, regardless of what kind of soil you have, organic matter makes a difference. So use compost, use aged manure, use straw, use leaves, use lots of organic mulches. Just pile on organics to the top of the soil, work in those decomposed or partially decomposed materials into the soil, and over a period of time, it doesn't happen overnight, but over a period of time, you should see improvement in your soil. Carla Garner, good morning to you. Thank you for that. Super chat to start today. Already got my bags of amendment seeds and other garden related items to be ready for spring and possible shortages. Good for you. I've been trying to get as much as I can too. Now, I'm not hoarding and I'm really not stocking up, but I'm anticipating that there's going to be a lot of work come springtime. And I do encourage this. If you wait until spring to really start thinking about your spring activities, it's too late. You really need to be thinking about spring in the middle of summer. And for those of you that are in summer right now, you need to be thinking about your fall in the middle of summer. If you can always be a couple months ahead or more with your garden planning and your gardening activities, then when the time comes, you can do it when it needs to be done. I think this is a problem that a lot of new gardeners have, is you don't realize how early you need to start some of the seeds if you want to grow from seed. And like peppers and tomatoes, for instance. Peppers really should be started as much as 3 months before you plan to put them outside. And so by thinking about those kind of things early, you can be ready when the time comes. And so that's great for you, Carla, to have everything set up. I'm still in that process. I'm still getting a few more seeds. I still have some seeds to start, but that's the way to approach gardening. Be ahead of the game, and that way you're not behind the curve. And that's so typical for so many of us, and I'm guilty of it myself. I want to grow a new plant in the garden. I buy the seeds. I don't take as much time as I should to read the seed package and find out about that plant. And then I think, oh, okay, we're 2 months away from the last frost date. I think I'll start some of those flowers that I bought. And then I find out that it's the kind of seed that requires cold stratification for a month, and then it requires 3 months of germination and growth before going outside, for a total of 4 months, and I'm already 2 months behind, which means I need to wait a whole year to really do it effectively. So think about those kind of things as we move into the new year. What can you do to get ahead of the game? And gardening is so much better when you're not rushed, when you take the time, when you plan and you do it on your schedule, as opposed to being forced to act quickly because the seed packet tells you you have to, and you didn't know that until it was too late. Okay, Camille Lozak is saying, Gardener Scott, is that your windowsill herb garden? Well, thank you for asking that question. Now, this is actually from Melat who, if I remember right, is from the UK. And this is Melat's garden. And so sent the picture. I wanted to showcase it today because I think it is really a nice garden. You know, so often we think of gardens as being outside, raised beds, open ground, big pots, containers. But I think this is really a great opportunity to see how you can have a garden indoors, especially if you have a full wall of windows like Melat. So This is not my garden, but I think it's a great representation of what a garden can be even when you don't have the outdoor space. And I think that's Melat's issue, is not a backyard, not a space, not a landscape to deal with. Instead, it's gardening indoors. And you can still have, and if you look, you can see herbs, you can see flowers, you can see a tomato plant. There's a lot of opportunities when you decide to grow indoors and set up a nice spot like this. So thanks for asking that question, and thanks Melat for sending in this picture. Don King, thank you for that way to start the day. Another contribution and another super chat. I appreciate that, Don. Thanks. Peter is asking, how do you find out which seeds? Is there more to that? Not. So I think there's more to that question, Peter. So as far as, I'll just assume what you're asking, waiting for the second half of the question, but how do you find out about what seeds work in your area, what seeds don't work in your area, which seeds to start indoors, which seeds to start outdoors? A lot of this comes from experience, but it begins with the seed catalog or your source of seeds. And the seed catalog or the nursery should have some general information about how the plant will grow. And then when you get the seed package should tell you how to sow those seeds to start that initial care, and then put the plant in the garden or put the seeds directly in the garden. So as you're thinking about what you want to grow and how you want to plan your garden with specific plants, you do have to now focus on the plants. And so in recent weeks, we've been talking about garden planning, about some scheduling, about getting ideas of what plants you might want to grow. This actually feeds into that really well, because as you look at each individual plant, it takes a little bit of research. It takes a little bit of time to find out what that specific plant needs in the way of sun and water and nutrients. And you may want to grow a particular type of plant, but as you start looking at individual choices, you may find that some of those plants will do better than others. And I'll use lavender as an example. There are many lavenders that do well in zone 7 and zone 8, but I live in zone 5. And so the lavenders that I've selected are lavenders that are hardy to zone 6 and have a probability of surviving in zone 5. And so I just can't go to a catalog and order any lavender that I find. I have to do that extra little bit of research to make sure that it will do well in my area. So let's see what we have popping up here. Danielle is saying, do you grow anything hydroponically? Are you able to transplant hydroponic plants? Excuse me, that sneeze snuck up on me. I am not growing hydroponically. We talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago in the live stream. When you grow hydroponically, you can transplant those plants, but it takes a little bit of extra precaution because those roots aren't growing in soil. They've been growing in nutrient-rich water. And so if you take them out of that nutrient-rich water and then put them into a pot, there are some extra steps that you should take. So the soil should also be nutrient-rich. Basically, you have to gently set the plant into a pot and then take some moist potting soil and put around it. And I would recommend doing that step. To take hydroponically grown plants and try to put them directly outside doesn't work very well. But if you take that intermediate step of putting them into pots, gingerly adding soil around the roots as part of that step, allowing them to grow in those pots for a brief period, and then hardening them off like you would any other plant, you can transplant hydroponic plants outdoors. Lots of extra steps. Most people are growing hydroponically to be able to harvest the plants, the microgreens or whatever they're growing as part of the hydroponic process. But if you're doing it for transplanting purposes, I would recommend an intermediate pot at some point. Laura Fry, today in southwest Idaho, we have a dusting of snow and icy roads, but tomorrow I have plans with my kids and grandkids to do seed strips. That's awesome. And thank you for that super chat. And I'm guessing that you're referring to the video that I did with my grandkids where we made seed strips. Great activity, especially a snowy day activity, especially with grandkids. So I hope you have a wonderful time with that, because I really enjoy doing that with my grandkids, and I have no doubt you'll do it and have fun as well with yours. So that's awesome. Thanks so much. And I noticed that Laura Foles also commenting about a foot of snow coming. We have snow coming here in just a couple of hours. We're not supposed to get that much, maybe 2 to 4 inches, but I know there's a lot of us that have that potential for snow. So stay safe and stay warm over the next few days. Patrick, good to see you again. Thank you for that contribution. After reviewing several planting tools, I went with a simple Excel spreadsheet. Looks like it's going to work well from planting to harvest. Outstanding. That's a great way, and I've used Excel a lot. I tend to be a little more scatterbrained the older I get, so I do a lot more on paper, though I use graph paper with the little grids on it, just because I'll be out in the garden or I'll be walking through the living room and I'll have a new idea about my garden or a new plant or something I want to change. And so I can go directly to the paper and just erase it or add it. And so I'm still a paper person. But when I was at the school garden, the Galileo garden, where I was managing 101 raised beds and a 42-foot dome greenhouse, everything was on an Excel spreadsheet. From when I would start the seeds, to when they would germinate, to when I would transplant, to when I would put them outside, to how productive they were, to what choices of which plants for which beds. Excel spreadsheets are a great option. So I'm glad to hear that you're doing that, because you got to do what works best for you. And if Excel works best for you, and I know it can be very effective, that's awesome. Keep doing that. Pamela Corsi is saying, Scott, have you ever tried winter sowing? I'm glad you asked that question. I have a video coming out on winter sowing. I think I have it programmed for about 2 weeks from now, maybe 3 weeks from now. And so I haven't done much winter sowing. This is actually going to be the most I've ever done, and I'm for this video. And so it's I think, kind of an interesting, relatively innovative thing. And I didn't discover winter sowing for many years after I'd been gardening. And a lot of you are probably wondering what winter sowing is and what's so special about winter sowing, especially when we're talking about snow coming. But that's exactly the point. You essentially take some type of container, usually like a milk jug, fill it with potting soil, and sow your seeds in that milk jugs. Then you put them outside and you leave them outside. And one of the wonderful things about winter sowing is you don't have to worry about grow lights. You don't have to worry about additional heat. The seeds will germinate when they're ready to germinate, when there's enough heat and when there's enough light. And so it's a really easy way, and I think it works best for perennial flowers and native plants that usually require some type of cold stratification or vernalization, where they need cold conditions. And we can do that in our refrigerator, but it's not always as effective. But if you sow seeds and then put them outside, they'll germinate when the conditions are perfect for that seed. And then because they're protected in a container, they'll continue to grow, and now it becomes kind of like a mini greenhouse. And then when the plants get large enough, you transplant them out, and they've already been hardened off because they've been growing outside the whole time. So those are the basics of winter sowing. I have that video coming up in just a couple weeks, and I'll be showing you how I do it, and I'll be talking more about it, but those are the essentials. So thanks for asking that question. Winter sowing is a really nice idea for this time of year for those of us in the snow. And I think it's going to be fun to actually go out to the garden on snowy days and see the seeds ready to grow when they're ready to grow. So I think that's cool. Teddy Bear DIY, greetings to all. My work schedule screws up any sort of planning, so I just do my gardening randomly. You know, there's There's nothing wrong with that. And I actually do a lot more of that than I tell you about. I think planning is ideal. You should plan. I do a lot of planning, but there's also a lot of my gardening that's random too. I'll be walking through a nursery at any time of year and come across a plant that I think would look good in my landscape, and I'll buy it. It's not part of any plan. It's not anything that I thought I would do. I just will buy a plant and then try to figure out where it's going to go. Now, my plan does allow for some flexibility in that way, where I know there will be areas I need to fill in. And so often when I come across a plant like that, that's what I have in mind. But I do the same thing with seeds. This last year with my square foot garden bed, I had a great plan, put all the plants in place. I had a subsequent plan, but some of the plants in the second planting, the spinach, for instance, and some of the carrots, they actually grew better than I expected. And so I harvested them sooner than I anticipated. And now I was left with now what do I do? I had a lot of that in the garden this year, where I would just add another plant as another part of the succession planting that I hadn't even really planned for, and it all turned out pretty well. Sometimes you don't have enough time. I tried that with some squashes and cucumbers, anticipating that my season was going to be longer than it ended up being. And so you could call it wasted effort that I started growing some cucumbers and squashes in a bed that I hadn't planned to do it in. And then the frost came and killed them, but that's okay. It's all new experience. It's all organic matter to add to the compost pile. So I think random gardening actually has some really good advantages because it keeps you out there doing things and trying things. And even if the plants don't grow because the frost comes, you've learned and you've got material to use for compost. So good for you. Janan is saying, my new joy is finding half off plants at the big box stores and babying them back to health. Completely agree. Last year, the first year that I was in this new house, as I was putting together my landscape, almost exclusively, that's what I did. I moved in the summer and started putting some plants in the fall, and pretty much all of the plants that I put in my landscape last fall were half off from the box store, and most of them have done pretty well. Nursing them back to health is a lot of fun, and it's a great way to save money. And thanks for throwing that out there, because that's one of those underlying themes of today's show, is ways that you can save money with your gardening. And it is doing things like that, buying plants on clearance. Often, and I've done this once, I know other people do it much more than I do it, but occasionally you'll come across one of these big box stores that are throwing out plants because they've been on clearance, they've dried out, and they're just getting rid of them. Some of those plants can be saved, and you can pick them up for free. Like I said, I've only done it once where I saw someone throwing them away, and I went up and said, would you mind if I took that? I'm a gardener. And it's like, yeah, whatever. And some of those plants had actually ended up doing pretty well. So great suggestion, John Ann. I think that's a nice idea. And you can do the same with seeds at the end of the season. And so I'll also do that. I've talked about this in recent weeks too, where I'm often planning 2 or 3 years ahead for some of the areas of my landscape and some of the garden beds and some of the new plants I'm going to be trying. And so start thinking about that. Start thinking not just about what you're going to do in 2021, but think about what you're going to be doing in 2022. And I know it's kind of mind-blowing, but if you think that way, then you may not need to buy seeds right now at full cost for something that can really wait a year. And now, at the end of the season, when a lot of these seeds start going on sale, you might be able to pick up the same plant that you were going to grow anyway. And just by delaying a little bit or just shifting your plan, or maybe it is part of your plan for 2022, you can save money in the process. And it's not just seeds, it's plants as well. It's materials for greenhouses. There's a lot of gardening related tools and materials that you can find much much cheaper at the end of the season if you can have the patience to wait that long. So there you have it. Okay, let's see what we have. Lauraful saying our first year gardening, we got 100 seed packets at 10 cents each as it was late in the season. Absolutely. Great experience for you, Lauraful. And that's one way to accumulate a lot of seeds. But as you know, I know you know this, Lauraful, but the seeds you get, again, just because they're cheaper doesn't mean that they're going to grow a smaller or inefficient plant. The seeds are the seeds, but seeds will last for years. So if you can find a seed package at the end of season for 10 cents, well, you've got years to use those seeds. And I'm guilty of that, and I won't even use the word guilty. I look at it as an advantage. I'm lucky enough to have bought seeds like that for 10 cents a package. Seed packages of plants that I had no intention of ever growing. But when you see a seed package for 10 cents, it's hard to pass up. And so over the years, I've had a whole bunch of those seed packages where I get, for 10 or 25 cents a seed package, a plant I wasn't planning on growing. And then occasionally you find something that you like. You never thought you would grow that particular variety, and then you do, and then you find out you like it. Or if it's one of those things that you ultimately decide, no, you're not going to grow that plant, well, give the seed package away to someone who will. I mean, you're only out 10 cents. What a great opportunity to spread the garden spirit through seeds that didn't cost you much, or finding that treasure that you didn't even know was out there. So think about that. Think about that as seasons end, and especially those of you that are in summer right now. There are a lot of places that in the middle of summer, that's when they start their clearance sales. That's when they start unloading their materials. So if you're in New Zealand or Australia or South Africa or those South America countries, I know that a lot of you that are watching these streams, start thinking about that right now. Start looking for those deals. Start looking for the opportunity to find discount materials that you're going to be using a year from now. And you've got to have patience. You've got to have the storage space. It helps to have a plan so that you don't forget that you stuck all these seeds in a closet, but it is a great way to save money. Jay is saying, I grab the 10-cent packages and then share them around to other gardeners. Good for you, Jay. That's exactly the garden spirit that we should all be trying to spread. Good for you. And Rudimental Gardening is saying, don't forget to get your tools prepped for spring. Good time to sharpen your pruners and loppers, clean your shovels, get busy gardeners. Absolutely. Good suggestion, Rudimental Gardening. This is a time of year for those of us that are expecting snow and will have cold conditions for the next couple months. It's so easy to just stay inside and curl up and read through the seed catalogs, but you're exactly right. And I just did that actually this last week. Went out to the garage, did a little inventory of my tools, which ones still needed to be cleaned. And I came across my Hori Hori, which is a Japanese gardening knife. I have it in a sheath, and I hadn't cleaned it since the last time I used it. There was still some soil sticking to it. Well, those are the kind of things that can cause rust on tools. So absolutely, spend some time right now, get out there, clean your tools, look for the ones that need a little bit of extra care. Maybe they need some sharpening, maybe they need a little bit of oil, but the great time of year to do that. So thanks for that suggestion. That's a really good idea. Kylie Barabbas, is it too early to start starting tomatoes and peppers for a last frost date of April 22nd? And so typically tomatoes are started 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost date. So for you, that would be February. But peppers are started typically 10 to 12 weeks before the last frost date. And so that's approaching here in just a couple weeks. Because I have a shorter growing season, I like to transplant plants that are a little bit bigger, and so I'll add a couple weeks to that. And so that means for a last frost date of April, then yeah, the beginning of January could be the time that you need to start your peppers. And then wait 3 to 4 weeks after that, and then you can start your tomatoes. So like I was saying on an earlier live stream, it just creeps up on us so fast, and suddenly it's time to get ready for the gardening season by starting seeds. And so if you have a March last frost date, it's now. And if you have an April frost date, it is very, very soon. Those of us with a May last frost date, we have a few more weeks before we really need to start thinking about that. That's one reason why I wanted to talk about some grow room discussion today. But good question. Yes, you should start thinking about doing that very soon. Tamara Benet is saying, overwintering our tomato garden experiment is doing great, except the tomatoes are getting black mold in the crevices. Does this mean we need to take out all our plants due to mold? Probably not. Mold is just a type of fungus, and those type of funguses typically aren't really going to do much in the way of damaging a plant. It's the fungi that you can't see that work their way inside the plant that really do the most damage, the harmful fungi. So if you've got mold growing, it might just be a humidity issue. You've got too much water, and you can use something to clean it off. So hydrogen peroxide is real good. Just take some hydrogen peroxide on a paper towel and rub it over the leaves and the plants, and that can be a very effective way to deal with some of those issues. But look at the growing environment and see if maybe it's a little bit too humid. See if you can deal with the mold issue now. And it's also, we were talking previously as well about using baking soda in water. You can do the same thing. Use maybe a tablespoon of baking soda in a gallon of water or so, wash off the leaves, and that will also deal with some of those fungal issues. See if that helps. If it helps, you can keep growing your tomatoes and it shouldn't be an issue at all. As long as the plant stays alive, once you put it outside to begin growing again, all of those fungal issues should grow away if it is just a mold. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Laura's asking, can winter sowing replace indoor seed starting? I guess milk jugs might be too short for tomatoes. It can be done. And so you can actually start tomatoes using a winter sowing method in milk jugs. Now, I think it takes a little bit extra attention because you still need to make sure that the soil stays moist. You still need to make sure that they're getting enough light and they're getting enough warmth. And so, at least for me in my area, we go from winter to summer. I mean, there are times when spring doesn't last very much. It's like spring shows up the 1st of May and then suddenly it's summer in June. And so for me, it works better to grow the peppers and the tomatoes indoors in a controlled environment. But if you live in an area where spring is a nice gradual warming period and it warms continually until the time that you would normally plant, you could definitely start peppers and tomatoes in milk jugs outdoors. Again, they will germinate when the temperature is right. As long as you observe the forecast and bring any of those milk jugs in to avoid freezing temperatures, you can definitely start tomatoes and all those other warm season plants in a milk jug outdoors and save yourself some indoor space. Melat, there you are. Glad you're using the balcony garden picture. And he says, I started gardening this year and it's opened up a whole new world. I've learned a lot from you in this gardening community, so thank you. And happy birthday. Thank you, Melat. My birthday is actually in 2 days. And so this is my birthday week. And I appreciate you remembering that and sharing that as well. And thank you for showing us all your picture. I'm not sure if you were on earlier when I introduced you and introduced the picture, but I think this is great. I think this is a great example of a garden, a full-fledged garden. A lot of people, when they're growing plants indoors, don't necessarily think of themselves as gardeners because we have this misconception that you have to be outside and sweaty and wearing the hat and having the shovels and the hose, but not at all. You can be a full-fledged gardener and have a garden like you see behind me. So thank you for the picture and thank you for that contribution. I appreciate it. Masabi saying, look for your advice on seed organization, or took advice on seed organization, just flew past me. And it really helped me get my list of needed seeds and make my order. Thank you. Having trouble finding sun artichokes though. I don't know that I have a good source for those. If any of you know of a source for those, go ahead and share that. But thank you. I appreciate that. And the video that I just did this last weekend was all about seeds and seed organization and having too many seeds and figuring out what seeds you need to get. So if you haven't seen that video, check it out. It's the newest one. So thanks for all those happy birthday wishes. I appreciate that. It's so nice to get that, even if it is a few days early. So thank you so much. Yeah, and Kathleen saying a December baby too. A lot of us December babies have always had to compete with Christmas, and you just learn in life that birthdays often become just another day, especially the older you get, but it is so nice to be acknowledged. So thank you so much for that. Lauraful saying window plants use up a lot less water, especially over containers outside in the summer. Yeah, that's a good point. The controlled conditions for growing indoors can make a lot of those issues, like the regular everyday watering and the other things we have to deal with outside. It is a different type of gardening. I actually have great admiration for gardeners who can do effective and efficient and successful indoor gardening, because that's one of my weakest areas, is just keeping my houseplants alive. So I have the kind of houseplants that you just can't kill, because it does take extra effort to get it right. But watering is one of those things that once you figure it out, indoor gardening is almost a breeze. So great. Jwala Prasad, thank you for that contribution. I appreciate that. Good to see you here today. And Yankee Sista, happy birthday week. Mine was the 23rd. Well, happy birthday to you as well. My grandson's birthday was yesterday. And so it's the time of year. There's a lot of us. We just don't always get the attention. Like I said, the holidays tend to overshadow our birthdays, but happy birthday right back at you. That's awesome. Okay, let's see. OMFUG says, luckily I got my seed orders in early this year, just a few more packets to go. And it's all about planning this summer's garden and getting the timing right. Awesome. I'm thinking of redoing a video. I'm not sure if I will or not. I was just thinking about it this morning, actually. But I have a video from a couple years ago where I talk about when to start seeds. And I show my method for getting a calendar and putting all the dates on. And I'm thinking about redoing that video, slightly different way. I'm not sure if I will or not, but I did want to throw that out at you today. It's one of those things, and what I use is the free calendars. I don't know if you get them too, but if you donate to organizations, they'll often send you a free catalog at the end of the year, and that's what I use. I don't think it's something you need to go pay for. If you have a garden journal, it also works great in the garden journal. If you've got one of the journals that breaks it down by calendar date, and those are the kind of journals that I like. And so what you do is you start planning out your garden year. And so, for instance, we've been talking about the last frost date. You mark down your last frost date, and then you look at your seed packages. And this is, again, why you need to get ahead of the game and look at your seed packages well in advance of spring or summer, because the seed package will tell you, sow outdoors or sow indoors 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks before the last frost date. So you can take your calendar, mark your last frost date, then go get your seed packages, and then mark on the calendar exactly what date you're going to start those seeds, indoors or outdoors. And it holds true past the last frost date, because there's a lot of those warm season plants that will say, sow outdoors 2 weeks after the last frost date. Well, you can plan that in January. There's no reason why you need to wait until your last frost date to plan when you're going to start those seeds outdoors. So great way to get ahead of the game, great way to use some free resources like free calendars or a journal that you already have, and be ready to go for the garden season. And then, and I've done this, and I've also done it on some of the electronic calendars. If you've got a calendar on your phone, I've also done it on that too. And there have been days when I check the calendar and it's like, oh, I'm supposed to start tomato seeds today. Well, it's so easy for those things to slip our mind that when it's on the calendar and you're regularly checking your calendar, now you're prompted to start the tomato seeds on time as opposed to being late. So there you go. That's one of those things you can get ahead of the game. So I'm glad that you've got your seeds and you're getting ready to go. Okay. I see some onion talk. We talked quite a bit about onions. I think it was last week, wasn't it? So good to see that onions are starting, and you've got onions now for Zone 8 in Tacoma. That's awesome. Let's see what we have. Yeah, Kevin's saying onions are already in the ground in Georgia. And so, again, it varies. So I can give you suggestions based on a general date, like last frost date. Well, we all have a different last frost date. So it's all individualized when it comes to your own garden setting. Okay, let's see. Also wanted to start talking about seed catalogs. The video that's coming out this Saturday will be about seed catalogs. And I asked the question on the YouTube community to get some ideas of what you all think about the catalogs that you use, some of your favorite catalogs. And I appreciate all of you that have already answered that question. And if you haven't, go to the Gardener Scott homepage on YouTube, and in the community tab, you'll see the question. You might also see the question on your own homepage that might pop up. But it's what your favorite catalog is and why. And one of the reasons I'm asking this is because I think so many of us are using the same catalogs, and there's nothing wrong with that, because we find a company we like, and the reason we like it is because it's a good company, and a lot of other gardeners are doing the same, and we all tend to have the same ideas when it comes to catalogs. But I'm always looking for new ideas. I'm always looking for new companies. I'm always looking for new catalogs, because though catalogs will often have the same general information. So you can expect that every catalog will have the name of the plant in some section, usually alphabetical, and then they'll have the varieties that are offered, and then there's just a brief description of that variety. They'll have how many days to harvest. They'll tell you the price. And then somewhere, usually in the same description, they'll tell you how many seeds you get for that price. And that's pretty universal. You should expect that basic information in every seed catalog you find. But not every seed catalog has pictures of what the plant is going to look like, or what the fruit is going to look like, or how long the root is going to be. It's just that basic information. And then there are other catalogs that not only tell you that basic information and have great pictures, but they'll also have information about how to grow the plant and just some general good gardening advice and recommendations. And there are other catalogs that will have recipes of what you can do after you harvest the plant. And so that's one reason why I asked the question, and that's what I'll be discussing in this video coming on Saturday, is some of my favorite catalogs and why they're my favorite. And it's usually because it's that little extra that they give, especially for new gardeners. Territorial Seed, I'll point out, is one of my favorites. It's not a flashy catalog, but it's got great information beyond just what the seed is to tell you how to garden and how to plant those specific seeds to get the best results. I love Baker Creek, and so many of you love Baker Creek as well. But that's one of the biggest issues I have with the Baker Creek catalog. They have beautiful pictures, but there's not a lot of extra information in the catalog for brand new gardeners. And so continue to give me your input, if you would, over the next couple days, just so I can get some good ideas. And I've already got some ideas for I've already ordered some catalogs that I didn't even know existed based on some of your recommendations. And I also suggest, and I know some of you who have answered that question, focus, and I think this is a great idea, focus on local seed companies. So if you have a seed company, a seed catalog that's distributed in your region, by all means, that should be a seed catalog that you order, because first off, you know those plants can grow in your region. And you also are supporting some of the local business in your area as well. So I think that's a great idea. And I'll be talking more about that in the video as well, how you can really get some good information that might be regionalized for you, because there are a lot of catalogs that don't do well for people in regions that are really growing in a completely different climate from how those seeds were started. So more to see as far as the video on Saturday. I hope you'll check that out, and I hope you'll help me find out more information about what seed catalogs are out there. And I see some of this description right now. Thank you for that. Masadi Gal, Baker Creek Seeds, Territorial Seed Savers, Gurney's, all of that, all good catalogs. I prefer Gurney's seeds. I had some big issues with Gurney's plants a number of years ago, so I don't order plants from Gurney's. But those are also, Gurney's can be a great source for inexpensive seeds. So appreciate that. And keep throwing out that information. Keep sharing your favorites, because I've got dozens of catalogs, and every year I discover new ones. So I just think that's a lot of fun, actually. I love looking at catalogs. Okay, let's see what we have popping up. Talking about Ginja the Lawn Ninja. I don't know that I know that. I'll have to check that out. Interesting. And so Katrina's saying, I hate that about Baker Creek too. I'm new, and neither their catalog nor website provide days of maturity or basic information. Yeah, and their seed packets are also lacking in some of that as well. So Baker Creek, I think, is an ideal seed company for more experienced gardeners who don't need a lot of that basic information, because they've got some amazing plant opportunities. Their website is rareseeds.com, because they really do have some rare seeds from all over the world. One of the biggest issues is they don't necessarily give you all the information you need to know to grow that seed in the best way. And so you have to have a little bit more experience to have more success. I would say, and you can share if you've had the same experience, but I've had the least success with some of those Baker Creek seeds because I was guessing at how those plants would do in my garden as far as where to plant them and how to sow them to get the best results. Some of the stuff that have worked well is because I figured it out after a couple plantings. But I love Baker Creek. I love their catalogs. They're great. But it is one of those that it's a company that's better suited if you have a little bit of extra experience. Whereas Territorial Seed, for example, Seed Savers Exchange is another great one. They've got some really good information to help out beginning gardeners and gardeners of every level. So it's that time of year, like we've been talking about, you got to get your seeds. You got to think about starting seeds inside, or at least developing a plan for when you can put them outside. And it's seed catalog season. So go ahead and jump on top of that. Okay, let's see what else we have. Vintage Motorcycle Repair is responding to Jay Dixon. Last year's perennial plants didn't wait until next April to sow their seeds. They dropped seeds long ago. Nobody took them inside. That's great. Saving your own seeds, seeing the seeds in your garden, learning about when to get your seeds, who's going to get the seeds. That's great. I'm guessing that's some of what you're talking about. That's good. Okay, let's see. Mary BH, I'd appreciate that video renewed, and happy birthday. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I thank you for also as well for that support, because that does help me. I know some of you have binge watched my videos. I'll soon be doing my 250th video. That doesn't count the live streams. We're going to hit 50 live streams here in just another month and a half or so. And so as I look back on some of those earlier live streams, the ones that I was doing about 2 years ago, or not live streams, the videos that I was doing 2 years ago, there's still a lot of really good information in those videos, but I was still learning this whole process, learning how to make videos, learning how to make interesting videos, learning how to make videos that you would be interested in. And even though those videos are still out there with some good information, I do think I'll be remaking some of them, because I've learned too. All of us should be learning every single day when it comes to gardening. And so there are some of those videos that I did 2 years ago that I don't disagree with anything that I say in those videos, but I have learned more about some of those topics. And that's another reason why I want to do some of these as a redux, because I now know more about some of those subjects that I did the videos on. So if you see one of those newer videos and you had seen the previous video, the earlier one, I hope that doesn't give you a bad feeling to think that I'm just doing the same stuff over again. I really am trying to improve it and really trying to add some information. And if I can't add information, then I'll just keep the old video, because there is no reason to redo it. So, but I thank you for that support. That does help me as far as making a decision as I move forward. Danielle's asking, when is it too early to start sweet potato slips? And so too early is a relative term, because again, it gets to your last frost date and when you want to put the sweet potatoes out. I was just looking at something the other day that was suggesting 8 weeks for sweet potatoes. And so I haven't done that, but there's at least some sources that are saying 2 months is a good target. I saw everything from 6 to 10 weeks as I was doing some research on sweet potatoes a few days back. And so I saw 8 weeks more often, and I tend to compromise and come up with an average. So if I'm reviewing and researching and I see 6 to 10 weeks, then I just use 8 as a general guideline. So I'll throw 8 back at you. I haven't done that. That's just a number that I have gleaned from the information that I've been looking at recently. So I hope that helps. Heidi's saying, I rewatched the video on making my own seed starting soil and potting soil. I made my own potting soil using this video. That's awesome. That's good for you. And that's actually one of those videos I'm thinking about redoing, or at least doing an amendment to it, because I still use that basic mix. I still use a mix of the perlite and the peat moss as my seed starting mix. I still do that. And then I'll add compost to it, and I'll use that as my potting soil mix. Well, I've had so many people ask, and now that I'm doing worms of my own, I didn't really talk at all in that video about using worm castings as part of the normal potting mix process. And I know a lot of people have worms and they're growing worms for the castings, and they're using castings in their garden. I think worm castings really are a little more advantageous in a potting soil. And so thanks for that, Heidi, because that was one of my first videos when I really started this journey. And I still use the same mix, so that information is good. But I do want to add to it to talk more about worm castings and how that really is something that can be good in a potting mix. But I'm also planning a video this spring to talk about using, or how to use, worm castings, and potting soil will be part of it. So I haven't completely figured out how I'm going to approach those videos, but you can expect to see something about worm castings in the next couple months. MH is saying, can you make sure you share the link to those old videos when you redux videos? Good point. That's a good question. And yes, I will definitely try to do that. So my plan is, in the older video description, is to update the description with the link to the newer video. And then also, if you watch all the way through my videos, you should see at the end of the video there will be links to other videos. And so that's also part of my plan as well, that when I redo those videos, at the end of those older videos, I'll now insert the newer video, so that it gives you an option of either waiting to the end of the movie and then clicking on the new link, or going to the description and clicking on the new link. But yes, I will definitely reference those. And actually, in the live streams, I may do that as well if I think about it. Because I usually give you an idea of what videos are coming up, like the one on the catalog's coming up this Saturday. I'll try to do that as well. So during the live streams in the future, if I'm redoing a video, I'll try to remember to let you know that the video coming out is a redo, so that you can see the updated. So thanks for that idea. That's definitely something I'll incorporate, and I just have to figure out how. Okay, Danielle's saying, I told my boyfriend about your trip to capture worms in the rain for our containers. Now I have a partner in crime. That's awesome. And for those of you who, that goes back a couple months, I think we were talking about harvesting worms and putting them in your garden beds. And so if you're out for a walk after a rainy day and you see a worm on the sidewalk, if you walk past, that worm is going to die. But if you pick it up and move it into a garden bed, you've given it a whole new life, and you've given your soil a whole new life as well as you add worms to your garden. So partner in crime, I like that. I think that's great. Greg is asking, do you think it's possible to support a garden using entirely vegan products? Yeah, absolutely. I try to garden chemical free, and I'm not 100% organic as far as the materials I buy being organic or a vegan equivalent. But those materials are definitely out there. And the more you garden, the more you realize you can grow and develop and make a lot of those same materials yourself. And so compost is a perfect example. Once you figure it out and start doing it, you don't need to buy compost anymore. You can make all of your own compost, and you can make it however you want to be completely vegan. I talk about using aged manure, for instance. Well, in my new garden, I haven't really developed a good source for manure, so I'm vegan free in my garden. I'm not using animal products at all. In the past, I've used blood meal and bone meal, but I'm not doing much in the way of blood meal and bone meal or fish emulsion or any of that anymore either, because I'm trying to use my own compost. I use my own Comfrey tea. This year I'll be growing stinging nettles, and stinging nettles are ideal for making a fertilizer for your plants. So absolutely, there are a ton of ways that you can have a vegan garden. You're probably going to have to do most of it yourself because based on what I've seen, at least in my local area, there aren't a lot of vegan alternatives at the nursery yet. There might be organic alternatives, but they may not be vegan. But absolutely, that's a really good idea. I'm gonna write that down. I do not have vegan gardening on my list of videos. So I'm gonna add that to my list. That may be something that you'll see coming in the months ahead. So definitely move forward in that direction. And also, I know there's not a lot of other information out there. So maybe we could be at the forefront of a vegan gardening movement. And I'm not doing it intentionally. It's just as my gardening evolves, I find I'm using fewer and fewer animal products. And I don't know about you. How about the rest of you? How many of you are essentially doing vegan gardening, whether on purpose or by accident? I think a lot of us fall into that. The more we garden, the more we realize that we can have a fully self-sustaining system, and we can do it however we want to do it. So Linda's saying, will you explain air pruning? I'm not quite sure I understand it, specifically as it pertains to potatoes. And thank you for that contribution, Linda. And so the concept behind air pruning, and it is a little bit counterintuitive, but as roots grow, they need oxygen. Plants need oxygen, and the soil needs oxygen. So there's a lot of oxygen in soil, and plants need oxygen to grow. And the roots should be growing in an oxygen-rich environment in the soil. But, and this is where it's a little counterintuitive, roots can't grow in just oxygen. And so if you're growing in a container or a grow bag or in a hanging basket, the roots will self-prune essentially. When they grow to the point where they're growing into the air, they will stop growing because they really do need the moisture and they really do need some type of nutrient medium. Be that like hydroponics where it's all liquid, or in a container where we have some type of soil or soilless mix, which is moist. So the roots will need that moisture. When they hit the air, they stop growing. And that is essentially air pruning. You can grow in a container and the roots will only grow until they reach the side of that container. Now, if you're growing potatoes, for instance, If you grow potatoes in a 5-gallon bucket, those roots are not going to be air pruned, because when they hit the side of the bucket, they're just going to keep growing. But now they're going to be growing in a circle. They'll be growing around the outer edge of that plastic tub. But if you're growing any plant, like potatoes, in a cloth bag, like a felt grow bag, for instance, then when the roots hit the edge of that cloth, they will essentially self-prune, because that outer barrier, the outer edge of that cloth grow bag is going to be air. It's going to be oxygen rich, and the roots will stop growing. So I think that may be what you're asking. See if I fully understand the question. But you can do that how you want, and it could be to your advantage. If you don't want a really big plant with a lot of roots, then you can grow in a bucket with a lot of holes punched in it, or you can grow in a bag that is cloth or felt or some type of fabric, and that will reduce the number of roots in that container, because as they hit that outer edge, they will stop growing. As far as potatoes are concerned, I'll have to ask Tony this question the next time that he's on the live stream for sure. But I think the basic idea, as I understand it, is more of the energy would be going into the tubers, which is the potatoes, which is the part that you're trying to grow, as opposed to any peripheral roots, and that might be a reason to do it. I'm not entirely positive about that part of it, but overall, that's the basic idea behind air pruning. So Rob is saying good day, and again, good day to you, Rob. Thank you for that. Each week that you're here, I know you offer a salutation like that, so I appreciate that, Rob. Thanks. Okay, let's see what we have. Muffy 1981 is saying, had that problem last year. My potatoes were in a 5-gallon bucket and grew in circles. First time mistake. Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily say that's even a bad mistake. That's one of those things you learn from, and you can get some really good buckets in a 5-gallon container. But you do have to anticipate any plant you're growing in a container like that with a big root system, you're going to get some encircling, and it may not be what you're looking for. Masabi saying, I found nettle seed, but where does one get comfrey seed? Just do a search for Russian comfrey is a good way to look for it. Bocking 14, you can also do a search, because that's usually the variety I recommend if you're going to be buying it. The last time I did a search, I think I only found like 3 sites in the United States that were selling seed. So it is hard to find. You may need to order from a company you've never heard of before, but that's how to do it. Just do a search and see if you can find one that is being sold in your area or that you have access to. If you, again, find a gardening network, if you put the word out in your community that you're looking for some comfrey, there might be someone you know that has comfrey. And you don't have to grow it from seed. I've been growing comfrey and propagating comfrey for about 8 years now, and I've never grown from seed. I do it from root cuttings, and I think root cuttings are a much more effective way to grow comfrey. So if you can find someone who's already growing comfrey, just dig up a few of their roots and you'll have a ton of plants. That's a great way to do it. I did want to talking about propagating and growing your seeds. I did want to talk a little bit about grow rooms, and this ties in with the whole idea of thinking right now about starting your seeds as you move forward into the gardening season. And I call them grow rooms. You know, too often someone mentions a grow room and you think of some big marijuana grow operation, but that's not it at all. When I talk grow rooms, I'm talking about a space that you have dedicated to starting seeds and growing seedlings. And I say room, but you don't have to have a whole room. Some of my most effective growing was when I had a table set up in the guest bedroom, and that's where I grew my seeds and seedlings. And you'd be surprised how many plants you can grow on a tabletop if you haven't done it yet. Simple lights. You don't need to spend a lot of money. I had a really simple shop light. At that point, it was a 24-inch shop light, and I just built a little frame to suspend that 24-inch shop light over a flat that had 72 cells in it. And that was my very first grow room operation. A 72 cell flat with a 24-inch shop light of fluorescent bulbs on a table. And that's how I began. And so that's why I wanted to bring it up today. Don't think that you have to get fancy and you need all these lights and you need shelves and you need a dedicated room. You can start in just a really simple setup. I don't advise starting your seeds on a windowsill, especially if you're starting in the middle of winter, because there's just not going to be enough light. Later in the season, during the summer, yes, you can get away with it because there will be enough light. But to get the strongest plants and to really get a plant that can be transplanted, you should have dedicated lights. But again, fluorescent lights from a shop light are really all you need. The more you get into it, sure, then you can start getting LED grow lights and you can get blue lights and you can get red lights, but you don't have to start that way. You can start very simply. And if you don't have a 72 cell tray, well, then just use yogurt cups or cut off the bottoms of the milk jugs. Like we were talking about winter sowing, you can do the same thing. You can use the bottom half of a milk jug as a place to start your seeds and your seedlings. I just finished a container of lettuce. The chopped lettuce of different types, baby greens. Well, that's an ideal container for using underneath lights to grow your seeds. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. That's really the basic point. And you don't have to have a completely dedicated room. Reuse materials you have around your house. Use whatever light you have. I do have a video on lighting for growing seeds. And in it, I show that I use just a table light. Just a light that you would normally maybe read a book with. Well, you can use that for starting your seeds as well. You can have a floor lamp. Same thing. If you got a floor lamp that has one of those adjustable sections on it where you can point that part of the lamp directly at the plants underneath it, you can use a floor lamp. You don't have to get fancy. The seeds just need light, they need warmth, they need some type of growing medium, and they need water. And that's it. And if you can provide all of that to your seedlings, you can grow them anywhere. So especially for those of you who are new to gardening, who just this year were outdoors putting your seeds in, and now you want to move forward with some indoor starts, that's all you need. Keep it as simple as possible, because like we've already been talking about, you'll be making mistakes. There'll be lots of things to learn. I think it's much better to learn when you start without spending a lot of money than to make some of those mistakes after starting and you've spent a lot of money. I'd rather make my mistakes while I'm still in that cheapskate mode, recycling some of the materials that I have. So wanted to throw that out there, give you some ideas, and let you know that we've all done it. Even those of us that do have more of a grow room now, and you can see that in some of my videos too. I have a complete section set aside, a corner of my basement. It's my grow operation. I have shelves, I have lights, I have tables, I have a lot of plants, but I didn't start out that way. I started off very simply. And you can also ask for help, or let it be known during the holidays or during your birthday that you want some of those materials. And I wanted to go ahead and show you this. This is one of my most recent acquisitions. My daughter got me this. I think it was in my 200th video. I used this saying, "To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow." Audrey Hepburn said that, and it's one of my favorite quotes. Well, I got that from my daughter, and I'm not sure if she picked it up in one of the live streams or if maybe I had told her for sure, but having a watering can for your grow room is what you need to be able to, like in this case, water each individual you plant. So that was my Christmas gift from my daughter, one of my Christmas gifts that were gardening related. And I love it. I think it's a great gift. A watering can, because too often we'll use our yogurt cups and our floor lamps and try to grow plants, and then it comes to water and you're not sure what to do. Well, get yourself a simple watering can or have someone you know buy it for you. And I plan on using this watering can a lot in my grow operation. So this is one of those kind of things that just one piece at a time, get your grow operation going. One plant at a time, one seed at a time. You don't have to start big. You can start off small and really have some good success. So let's see what else we have popping up. Jay Dixon is saying Dollarama had A19, common type of bulb, LED grow lights for cheap and put in ordinary lamps. Absolutely. We don't have Dollarama here. I think that might be a Canadian thing, but yeah, you can go to the dollar store or any other inexpensive operation and buy lights that you can easily use as part of your grow operation. So thanks for throwing that out there, Jay, because a common LED light is really almost everywhere now. I actually went looking for fluorescent bulbs this year as I was expanding my shop light grow setup, and I had a hard time finding fluorescent bulbs. Everything is LED, and so many of the LED bulbs are basically the equivalent of what is being sold as a grow light, that it's really easy to get it going. So that's good. Mage Grey Wolf is saying, I just use an empty bottle with holes popped in the top. Good suggestion. You don't have to go fancy. You can keep it simple. Tamara saying, thanks to Rudimental Gardening. And it's good to see you here, Rudimental Gardening. I appreciate that you're sharing a lot of the information. I've seen some of that pop up today. Yeah, Jenny's saying, I drilled tiny holes in a water bottle cap to water my seedlings as well. And that's a great thing. The hardest part about putting the holes in the cap is putting the holes in the cap. If you haven't done it before, I find that if you take a needle or a nail and you heat it first, I hold it with pliers, and then I heat it, you can just slide that right through those plastic tops on the bottles and make yourself your own watering can. So nice option, nice option. And Frank is saying a $20 4-foot LED shop light from Sam's Club works great. You don't need to spend a lot of money, and that's what I actually got a $20 4-foot LED shop light from Lowe's last year to expand part of the area. I bought a table, just a folding table, and I put an LED shop light on top of it, and I greatly expanded the number of plants I could do. So thanks for that, Frank. That's a really good suggestion. Okay, and both Heidi and Jay are really active. You guys are so awesome. 2-liter soda bottles work if you cut off the top and make holes in the bottom for deep-rooted started plants. So 2-liter excuse me, 2-liter bottles can be used in so many ways. You can use the bottom as planters. You can use them as watering cans. I don't drink a lot of soda, and I drink, even when I do, I typically am not doing it at the 2-liter size. So I don't have a lot of them, but when I do have 2-liter bottles, I try to find some use for them in the garden rather than throwing them out. So thanks for that suggestion. That's a really good idea. Okay, let's see what else we have. Garden State Gardener is asking, what's your favorite slicing tomato? So my favorite is Kellogg's tomato, or Kellogg's breakfast tomato. And so Kellogg's breakfast tomato is an orange tomato. It's beefsteak size. It's delicious. And especially as a slicing tomato, I like to have fixed dinner with just tomato slices as a side, drizzled with a little olive oil, maybe some ranch dressing, maybe a little vinaigrette, whatever the mood seems appropriate. But that's my favorite, Kellogg's breakfast. And they actually have done pretty well in my region, even with a short growing season. And I grow them every year. So Kellogg's breakfast. And it's an heirloom, so you can save the seeds and grow the same plant year after year. So good question. And I'll actually be starting some Kellogg's breakfast tomato plants here in a little over a month because it's something I grow every year. Gretchen is asking, is it possible to cut off a top of a plant and put it in water to make more of that plant? It depends on the plant. So there are many plants that you can do that, even tomatoes. You can take a tomato plant. You got the sucker that develops at the crook of the leaves. You can pluck off those suckers, put them into water, and they'll root. There are many plants that'll work with, but there are many plants that it won't work with. So it completely depends on the plant. And you can experiment. This is one of those things, if you're pruning your plants, go ahead and take some of those cuttings and stick them in water and see if they'll grow. I did a lot of that this year with some of my landscape plants on purpose. But as I was pruning those plants, that's exactly what I did. I took them, I would either put them in water or I'd keep them in a really nice soilless mix until they rooted. Great way to propagate. Okay, Jay is asking, could you please promote your store in the last week of your promo code? You're just so incredible. I don't often think about that. So let's go ahead, and this will be the last promotion for the year. But below the video, you'll see t-shirts, Gardner Scott merchandise. If you click one of those, they'll take you to the store, either to that specific t-shirt or to other options. And if you use this code GS2020, you'll get 15% off until the end of the year. And you're right, the end of the year is fast approaching. So I know a number of you have already taken advantage of this, and thank you for that. And I hope it helped in your decision to get some Gardner Scott merchandise. I did want to point out, I got a comment last week. I didn't see it during the live stream, but I did afterwards when I looked at it, that Nachi G, who lives just up the road here from me in Colorado, said that they were at the store recently wearing some Gardner Scott merchandise and ran into someone else who was wearing Gardner Scott merchandise. And I just think that's incredible. I am wearing my Gardner Scott stuff more and more when I go out, hoping that that will happen to me too. So if you ever see someone wearing a Gardner Scott t-shirt or a Gardner Scott hoodie, please go up to them and say hello. It might be me if you're in Colorado, but it's already happened with the Gardner Scott community, at least locally. And I'd love to hear if that happens to you as well in some other part of the world. So that's incredible. So there you have it. Thanks for recommending that, Jay. And now we'll get back to some of the other comments. See what else is popping up here. I don't like the idea of getting close and closer to the end of our normal scheduled live stream, but it happens. But I do want to bring up to you, and I talked about this a little while back, but it's happening. It's happening on Thursday so that we can start January 1st with the Gardner Scott membership. So it's going to happen. There'll be a video that comes out on Thursday. You'll see a new button just below all the videos. You know where the red and white subscribe button is? Well, now there will be that blue and white join button. And if you become a member, no obligation. And I really don't want you to think I'm selling out and trying to really become more exclusive. It's not that at all. I'll still be doing all these Monday live streams. I'll still be doing all the normal videos. Starting next week, we're going to 2 videos a week. The gardening season is starting to ramp up here in the States. I've got more to talk about and more to show in the garden. So starting next week, we're going to 2 videos a week. In February, I'll be going to 3 videos a week in addition to the live stream. All of that is still going to happen. But because I want to do more, I've got the membership that's going to be happening here in just a few days. And so depending on what level you join at, if you choose to join and become a member of the Gardner Scott community, right off the bat, I've set up a private Facebook group because this conversation is just so awesome. And then it ends. Well, we're going to have a Facebook group where we can move over to Facebook and keep the conversation going. A lot more questions, a lot more assistance from the people that are involved with the Gardner Scott community. I'll be doing more live streams. There'll be members only live stream if you sign up for that level. And again, one of the things I really don't like about this is I see the questions popping up. I see the comments going. I see all of this happening. And I just can't answer all of your questions. Even though I really want to, I just can't answer all your questions. Well, I know that the numbers of people that will choose to become members will be relatively low. I'm not expecting thousands of people to become members, maybe a few dozen. Well, now when we do a live stream that's members only, I'm really hoping that I can get to all of the questions and that we really can have a two-way conversation. It's not just you asking a question and me giving an answer and me moving to the next question and giving an answer. It really will become a conversation because there will be fewer of us on those live streams. And that's kind of how or why I had to go to the membership, is just to be able to do that. And as the channel grows, I'm also at that point that I may need to start getting a staff, and that does cost, and I don't like asking for money. I feel so bad about that, but the membership helps. So when I move in that direction and I start expanding the Gardner Scott support team, that's one of the reasons that I'm doing the membership and why it costs. It's just so that I can offer some of these new things. You'll also get to see the videos coming out sooner. So I've got the video coming out on Saturday. Well, it's actually going to be available on Friday for members who sign up on Thursday. That's part of the plan. So you get to see things a day or two earlier, maybe get started with some of that information, have a question ready to go so that I can answer your question right away, because there'll be some priority. As this channel grows, which is insane, it's getting harder and harder to answer all the comments and all the questions. And I'll still do as much of that as I can, but through the membership, there's more likelihood that you're going to get that personal answer that I really like and try to give as part of the Gardner Scott experience. And then there's the collaborator level, where I am actually planning on making videos, short videos, that are just for the people on the channel or on the membership. Because the way YouTube works, you have to have a video that people want to see. And so the videos I'm doing right now are the kind of videos that are packed full of information so that people will see them, so that YouTube will push them out, so that more people will see them. But there are so many things I want to share about gardening, but they can't justify an entire video. It might only be 90 seconds worth of information, or maybe 2.5 minutes of a video. Well, I want to start making those for members of the Gardner Scott community. Just a quick release, just a quick statement, and you'll be able to see that. So there you have it, some basic ideas. I'll be talking about that more in the video coming on Thursday. If you're interested, that'll be the time to sign up and start joining. And I hope some of you will, because I know some of you were the ones that pushed me in this direction and suggested that I do it. And so it was your support that really kind of pushed me in this direction. And I hope to see you as a member of the Gardner Scott community as we move forward. So just wanted to go ahead and announce that today. Look for that to be coming in the next couple days. And Greg, thanks for that contribution. I appreciate that. Thanks for everything, and Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you as well, and Happy New Year to everybody. I'm not done yet. There's still some more left. We're probably going to run a little long today, but I don't think you're going to mind that at all. Okay. And Timer is saying it's only going to get more busy for Gardner Scott as the spring planting season begins. Yeah, and that's, I hate to admit it, because I'm one of those kind of guys that just likes to do everything myself. And we're just getting to the point on the Gardner Scott channel where I can't do everything myself. I know many of you know that my daughter helps me with these live streams to do a synopsis and identify questions that I didn't get to. And some of those questions will end up in future videos. But I'm just getting to that point. I need more and more help, especially as we move into the gardening season. And this is just one of the ways that I'm hoping I'll be able to move in that direction. So Laurelful saying, I can just see a 10-second video from Gardner Scott that says only attack now. You are just so clever. And yeah, there's actually some of those video ideas, not necessarily attack now, but that's the idea. There are times in the gardening season where you need to act now. You need to attack. You need to do something. And that's exactly the kind of thing that I've got in mind for some of this stuff. So there you go. And Camille saying 200K subs very soon. Yeah, that's kind of scary, and scary in a good way. But as this channel grows, yeah, I'll be hitting 200,000 subscribers here before we know it. And it's just going to keep growing, and it's just going to keep being harder and harder to keep it up and do the work. But I don't want to lessen the experience for any of you. And so you really aren't losing out on anything. If you don't become a member, you're not losing anything. You still get all of the dedication, all the videos, all the stuff coming. It's just that more that I want to give, that's all it is. So if you want more, become a member. If you want what you're already getting, then just keep getting it. Keep joining me on Mondays. Keep watching the videos. None of that's going to change. LP says, those are some fantastic ideas. Way to work your art, science, and technology brains. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Danielle's saying, do I need a special grow light to make my peppers actually grow fruit? I have lots of flowers, but no fruit. No, actually, you don't need special grow light. It might be the amount of light. You should be 12 to 14 hours of light a day for peppers. It could be temperature. It could be humidity. There's a lot of things that can cause the flowers to drop off of peppers, all flowers, for instance. It could be that they're not being pollinated. Flowers, like on peppers, perfect example. The flowers will open, you got a day, and actually only a few hours within that day for those flowers to be pollinated. And if you're growing peppers indoors, then the likelihood of those peppers being pollinated decrease. Now, peppers should pollinate themselves. But even for that to happen, there should be a breeze blowing. The plant needs to be disturbed in some way. So for indoor plants, you need to shake the plant. You need to have a fan blowing for those flowers to pollinate. But if they don't pollinate, they're going to drop off. So a lot of different things that could cause the flowers to drop off. Another opportunity to get more education, to learn more about peppers and why the flowers fall off. And it could be one of the things I just mentioned. It could be something else. So get out there and learn more about pepper flowers to see which could be your problem and why you're not getting the fruit. Do peppers need humidity? I've been shaking them every day. Good, glad to hear you've been shaking them. It's not that they need humidity, but humidity does play a role as far as the pollen. Now, pollen is alive, and it can dry out pretty quickly if it's too dry. Typically, a more humid environment isn't going to cause a problem, but it is a factor. Rudimental Gardening says, Gardener Scott, thanks for all you do and providing a means for gardeners to interact and learn. We're always learning. Never quit learning, gardeners. Absolutely, never quit learning. I learn stuff every day. As I was getting set up for this video coming on Saturday, and I started looking through all the different catalogs I have and highlighting the ones that I like best. And that's the focus of this video that's coming up is the best catalogs for gardeners, particularly new gardeners. I pick up stuff from catalogs all the time. The good catalogs that have that information, I'm continually learning. And just yesterday, I probably picked up half a dozen new ideas and how I'm going to move forward with some of my planting. And so here you go. Here's one of the things, and I'll be talking about this in the video. When you compare catalogs, you will see different numbers as far as days to harvest. And different catalogs determine that number differently. And so the good catalogs will tell you how they determine that date. And so for some catalogs, when they'll tell you that a plant is 60 days to harvest, well, they base that on when the seed goes in the ground. And other catalogs base that number on when the seedlings emerge. So those are the kind of things that you learn as you expose yourself to more of the gardening stuff. Every day you should be learning something more because you're exposing yourself to the gardening world and finding more stuff out there. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, we should be learning all the time. John Ann, thank you for that. Need more thumbs up. I appreciate that. And I do appreciate the thumbs up. Okay, let's go ahead and move to the little bit of philosophy as we move into the new year. And this is how I approach gardening and why I suggest it for you. 2020 is done. And we learned a lot about life and gardening in 2020. So it's a new year ahead. And so as you start your planning, as you get your seeds, as you start your grow operation, as you're moving into a new year, a new season, Or if you're in the summer right now and your summer is getting to the point where your plants are going to start fading and you're thinking about the end of season, but as you're looking at your growing and your knowledge and your own gardening philosophy, I encourage that you really keep an open mind, as open a mind as possible about what you like to do, what you don't like to do, how you're going to modify your own gardening methods. And the reason I say this is because I occasionally will get comments on a video. So I'll have a video saying, here's a way you can do it. Like with the no-dig gardening. I recently did a few no-dig gardening videos. And I said how I do it and different options for how you could do it. And it was surprising to me the number of comments for those videos in particular, where people would say, you should never do whatever. And some of the videos where I've talked about weeds, for instance, where I might mention chemicals, and I would get comments saying, you should never use chemicals. And that's what I want to caution you against. I don't necessarily think it is beneficial as gardeners when we approach a gardening season with, I'm never going to do this thing and I'm never going to do that thing. Partly because it really takes your gardening world and makes it smaller. And for those of you that have been watching my videos and live streams for a while, you know I think the gardening world should be larger. There should be more gardeners. We should be sharing our information. And where this becomes making your world smaller is it may work for you. There's nothing wrong with you deciding to not use pesticides in your garden. But as soon as you start telling others that they should never use pesticides in their garden, well, you don't know what their garden is like. You don't know what their issues are. I've got viewers that are growing in regions of the world that are completely different. I've got viewers in India who are dealing with insects I've never heard of before and diseases that I've never heard of before. And it may be appropriate to use a pesticide or an herbicide or a fungicide. It may be appropriate for you to use chemicals. So I'm not going to tell you never use chemicals. I'm just going to tell you that I try not to. But I've used chemicals, and I've used chemicals recently. And I know this came up in I think last week or the week before, talking about bindweed. Bindweed is incredibly difficult to get out of your garden. Well, I didn't use chemicals to deal with the bindweed at the Galileo garden, which is why I know how difficult it can be and how long it takes to get rid of it. But in my home garden, well, I have to admit it, I've used some herbicides to kill bindweed. That's the only thing I've used herbicides on, but it was necessary. That's why if you think you should never do it, well, you have to walk a day in another gardener's shoes because it may be appropriate for them. The same with the type of plants you're going to grow. I encourage you to not say, I'm never going to grow that plant, because you may find out that growing that plant opens up the world to you. Maybe not for your own use, but someone else. I've talked about this before. In years past, I didn't like green beans of any type. And I had that mindset as I would do my garden planning. Well, I'm never going to grow green beans because I just don't like green beans. Well, then I found out that people in my life loved green beans and loved when I made pickled green beans. So while one year I might have approached it thinking I was never going to grow green beans, now I grow beans all the time. Partly for me because I've developed the taste for some varieties, but for the rest of the people around me who do like green beans. If I had continued with my gardening journey thinking that there was something wrong with green beans and they would never have a place in my garden, well, just think of how much smaller that makes my own world. Because now when you ask a question about green beans, I wouldn't be able to answer it because I wasn't growing green beans. I grow everything I can. Even if I don't think it's going to work, even if I know it's not going to work, I'll still try a lot of those things. And that's what I encourage you do as you move into the new year. Get all that negativity out of your mind. Try to be as positive as possible. Try not to limit what you're going to do. Don't think that you're only going to grow in pots or you're only going to grow in the ground. That's another one of those. I've got a lot of videos about raised bed gardening, and I get that in that comment more often from that subject than anything else. People who just are so opposed to raised beds that they become trolls in the comments when I talk about the advantages to raised beds. I'm not telling you you have to grow in a raised bed. I'm just throwing out the possibility that you might also like raised bed gardening if you try it. So don't be so quick to shut down other gardeners' ideas. Don't shut down other gardeners' ways of doing things. Try instead to acknowledge that we are all facing the same basic dilemma of how to get plants to grow, but we're doing it in different areas, in different ways, with different philosophies and different mindsets. And it's okay that your way of doing things is different than my way of doing things. And maybe if we can strike up a conversation, if we can have a dialogue, maybe each of us will learn something from the other. That maybe you'll learn a little bit about raised beds, and I'll learn a little bit more about in-ground beds and why they're advantageous for you and why mine are advantageous for me. By establishing a dialogue, by having a conversation, you can really learn so much more, and you'll become a better person, and you'll have a better gardening year for it. So try to shut down the divisions that we have in gardening. Try to cut down on some of this polarization as to different methods and different ways of doing things. And let's just all try to get together and recognize that we do have a common purpose, that we are doing this for the same reasons, even if we're doing it a little bit differently. Approach 2021 with that general mindset, and I think it'll help you out. And some of you may have already figured out that this extends beyond just gardening. It extends to life as well. So as we enter the new year, I hope you'll keep that in mind. And Nachi G, thank you so much for that contribution. I appreciate it. It's been a really good gardening year for so many reasons. One of the reasons is because so many of you discovered gardening this year. And so many of you who already knew gardening discovered that you like it even more. And that's why I know 2021 is going to be a great gardening year, because we're all moving in a direction where we're already here. We already like it. We already know that it's something we want to do and that we want to extend for many years to come. And I hope you will do this for many years to come. Thank you so much for all the support you've given me this year. Thank you for helping this channel grow so much. I hope to see some of you on the membership as we move into a new year, trying new things. And I want to do those new things with your help. And I'm really looking forward to what next week will bring, because next week will be next year. And I hope to see you here next Monday, yet again, for another edition. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.